So I've been buying records of nostalgic note. I'm not like a vinyl collector or anything. These aren't special editions, but I thought I would just tell the story of how this album here kind of really heavily influenced me when I was a teenager and a 20-something and got me into a lot of music that I still listen to this day. This is the first solo album by the guy who was the lead singer in Van Halen, David Lee Roth. And one day, Simon Proctor brought a copy of this album into school, and I'd never heard kind of exciting American rock guitar playing before. And this was my first introduction to it, and it was like, why is that naked man doing that on there and everything, and who is this guy? And I didn't know anything about Van Halen at the time. I'd pretty much been listening to my parents' record collection at that point. And, why are they all dressed funny? Why is that man wearing a blouse? It was all kind of, this is about 1987. I was still in school, and Simon brought this into the music room. We used to stay back in the music room after school and listen to records. And this was his brother Mark's album. And I just, he lent me it, and I took it home and I played it over and over and over again. And now I own a copy. I've just got this one sent to me from Portugal, from discogs.com. And like I said, there's nothing particularly collectible about it. But to me, the sentimental value is high. And I'm really happy to finally own this record on vinyl. It leads nicely into the story of the next album that I've bought on vinyl. Again, not a collectible. But discovering Steve Vai on Eat 'Em and Smile as I did, his first solo album was the other thing that we played a lot back then. And, I had stuff on there, again, that no one had ever really heard a guitarist do before. There was nothing new about kind of instrumental rock guitar albums. Jeff Beck and Mahavishnu Orchestra had been doing it for many, many years, but I hadn't heard of Jeff Beck or Mahavishnu Orchestra when I first heard Flexible. And it's one of those albums that on vinyl has all kinds of sleeve notes that you can pour over, and wacky artwork and strange music. And yeah, Steve Vai Flexible was the next sort of jumping off point for me. And this is really the time when I started really seriously practicing the guitar, because there was no way I could keep up if I didn't practice every day. A lesser known album in that sort of pantheon that a lot of guitarists went through. I think this is the unsung hero of that era of kind of big guitar solo, Americana, heavy rock, experimental thing. Again, two strange looking characters on the back there. That guy there is Steve Stevens, and he was the guitarist with Billy Idol, and he did the Top Gun theme, and all of that. But he did this quirky solo album called Atomic Playboys that I always wanted to own on vinyl, and now I finally do. And there's some real kind of stingers on there that guitarists the world over would do well to have a listen to, even to this day. There's some really, really big, exciting guitar solos and whatever, and, sing-along choruses. And this album for me is kind of, it's a missing link, and not a lot of people know about it, and it's not as popular as I think as it should be. Now, of course, getting into Steve Vai meant that I discovered Zappa. It had to happen eventually, and I'm a huge, huge Zappa fan, and I always wanted to own Bongo Fury, Zoota Laws, and The Man from Utopia on vinyl, and now I do. Very happy with that. Again, the thing about vinyl is all the artwork and being able to get up close and, ooh, what's a mix engineer do? And, that's kind of missing with MP3, and it vanished with CD, really. But, of course, you don't get into Stevie Vai without discovering that his guitar teacher was Joe Satriani, and I'm really happy that I've got this. I think this was Joe Satriani's second album, Not of This Earth. And again, there's some just freakishly cool guitar playing on here, and really nice sounding album and everything. Back when Joe Satriani still had hair, And yeah, this is probably, alongside Surfing with the Alien, is probably my favourite Joe Satriani album. And of course, getting into guitarists of all different stripes back then, there used to be a second-hand record shop in Stockton called the Record Mart. And I used to go in there and just pick up albums that looked like they might have exciting guitars on them. And one day I stumbled across this by the Michael Schenker Group. I had no idea who Michael Schenker was. But this album is the album that features the track Armed and Ready, which any guitarist who's heard it has immediately tried to pick up the guitar and play, and it's not easy. And of course, Van Halen, I had to go and discover Van Halen after I sort of found out about David Lee Roth in reverse order. I went back and got a lot of the Van Halen back catalogue. Again, these aren't collectibles, it's nice for me to have them on vinyl. And running underneath all of that, of course, is the incredible Queen. And I think Live Killers is quite possibly certainly it's the best live stuff, I think. Just being able to get in and have a look at all these photographs on the sleeve while you're listening to it was all part of it. And the vinyl is, in a green and red sleeve and all the exciting artwork. And it's really over the moon to own Live Killers on vinyl. This is actually my original copy of Live Killers. I didn't go out and buy this again recently. I've had this since 1984 maybe. Now, I mentioned earlier that me and Simon Proctor used to stay back in the music room at school. Before Simon discovered the joys of playing records back in the music room after school, I used to hang around in there with John Armstrong, who was a fantastic piano player and a great guy, and we're still sort of in touch with each other on Facebook. And he introduced me through his brother Paul's record collection to Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And I'm over the moon to finally own, even though it is fairly tatty, a real world copy of Welcome Back, My Friends, to the Show That Never Ends, ladies and gentlemen, Emerson, Lake and Palmer live. And I know that they're cheesy, I know that it's kind of not cool to be into prog, and I don't care about any of that. I just love listening to this album, particularly, of course, Carnival 9. And yeah, over the moon to own a copy of that. And also the studio album that inspired it, with the sort of Giga artwork on the front, Brain Salad Surgery. People hadn't really heard that kind of stuff on synthesizer until Keith Emerson came along, and I'm really glad to own a copy of that. Underneath the box that Eatman Smile came in is some of the newer vinyl that I've been getting, just because I'd like to own these things on vinyl. This is David Bowie's last album. I've not played this copy because I also got it on download so that I could listen to it without damaging the vinyl, and that's going to stay in its cellophane. And I think it's a fantastic album, completely different to anything he's ever done before, which of course is David Bowie's thing, to be different every time. The Art of Noise, I just wanted some Trevor Horn on vinyl to hear it the way it was meant to be heard. No particular sentimental value to this one, other than that it's kind of a seminal album, really. Again, Genesis, selling England by the pound. By no means collectible. I just wanted to own some Genesis on vinyl. And same with the Cocteau Twins, Garlands. Always loved the sound of Elizabeth Fraser's voice, and my mate Kev got me into the Cocteau Twins. And yeah, I'm just like having the vinyl. This is a 12-inch single with the unlikely pairing of Pat Metheny and David Bowie. And I bought it purely and simply because I couldn't believe they'd ever actually worked together. And it's interesting. This is a kind of an unofficial, official bootleg of the Frank Zappa and the Mothers live at the Fillmore in 1971. It's really well recorded. Listen to this one quite a bit. It's nice to just put it on, and there's some exciting members of the band in the lineup there, including the appearance of Bob Harris. And yeah, Zappa's always fun to have. And then I got the new ABC album because I was amused by the fact that it sort of took them 30 years to do a follow-up to the original Lexicon of Love. And some mega production on this, actually, Really nicely recorded, and again, this one has never been played because it came with a digital download. So it's nice to just keep that in sort of pretty good condition. I got this Santana album because I just loved the idea of having all of that beautiful artwork, and Caravanserai was one of them albums that my mate Kev told me I should listen to, and eventually I will get round to listening to it, but I haven't played that vinyl yet. I didn't know I had this. I was going through my parents' record collection a couple of weeks ago when we were having a tidy out. And I was surprised to discover that this was in there, because I don't remember buying it. But Stanley Jordan's a really wacky guitarist who kind of plays with both hands, but not in the sort of Edward Van Halen type way. He kind of plays it almost like a piano. And this is on Blue Note, so yeah, he's not a rock guitarist by any stretch. But yeah, just again, the beauty of vinyl having all of this space to have liner notes and what have you. And he performs cover versions of Beatles songs, and really interesting style of playing the guitar. Bowie, what can you say about David Bowie that hasn't been said a billion million times before? Fantastic to have a greatest hits there. I've got a picture disc of the late great Prince Rogers Nelson. Again, nothing particularly collectible about this, but I just like having it. And again, this isn't one I've gone out and bought recently. This is one that I've had since the 80s. Or whenever it was that album came out, early 90s possibly. And Van Halen, without the sleeves, because I'm crap and I didn't keep them in very good condition. And I wanted to own this on vinyl, because I saw a documentary about Ian Dury and realised that sort of all of that scene had passed me by a little bit. I was a little bit too young to be part of that. And so I thought I'd go back and find that music again, and I've enjoyed listening to this quite a few times now. Not the kind of music I normally listen to, but fantastic musicians. And yeah, that's sort of the beginnings of me having a vinyl collection. So maybe if you want to leave some comments down below of other things you think I should maybe check out that are good to own on vinyl. Take me outside the bubble of everything being rock, maybe. And whatever you do, don't forget to go out and buy Atomic Playboys by Steve Stevens, because I think it's great. Right, ta-ra!